Welcome to Mindful Live number 43. Mindful Live number 43. It is the 22nd of the 2nd of 2022. So you have 22 of the 2 of 2022. And it's Tuesday. So Tuesday the 22 of the 2 of 2022. Yeah, we're really into Tuesday here. And I have no idea what the significance of it is, to be quite honest. It's just a lot of twos on a Tuesday. Lots of twos on a Tuesday. Good way to remember today. If you ever had some trouble remembering it. Alright. So what we're talking about, what we're speaking about today, is some of the debate. I have no idea what Matt played, Mr. So is some of the debate going on right now on the amendments to our sexual offenses legislation, sex law and videotape, sexual offenses legislation amendment. Social justice warriors who video record incidents of people engaging in lewd acts and share it on social media to prompt police action can likely land themselves in hot water under the amended sexual offenses legislation. A recent video recorded by a woman of a man and woman engaging in sexual activity in a car on a beach in full view of children came to the fore at a special select committee meeting yesterday on the Sexual Offenses Amendment Number 3 Bill 2021. The video has been circulating on social media for over a week. Independent Senator Paul Richards said at the SSC meeting that it was sent to his mobile phone over the weekend. It is a really unfortunate video, and the woman is taping it in demonstration of how disgusted she is by these two adults having sex in full view of children, and the woman's child is in the immediate vicinity, and while she's taping, her child comes into frame and she says, "Look, my child is here," he noted. Good evening, Scafty. I did not see this particular video. I have no idea of this particular video. Now, it's interesting that the video was sent personally over there to Independent Senator, Mr. Paul Richards. Good night, Empress Rooney. Good night, J. Chris, my two moderators, entering at the same time. Where were y'all? A video that Independent Senator Paul Richards was speaking about. Good night, Kyle Edgehill, where that was recorded of two people having intercourse on the beach, and someone was recording it and a child was in view apparently. So Paul Richards was speaking about this. I didn't see this video, but I have seen videos like this. Wow. I am not even reading that, Empress Rooney. Yes, so I have seen some videos like this before where it really does make me wonder. The person makes it seem like, they're doing this to show how disgusted they are by this act. And this is such a reprehensible thing to be done in the public in this country. I really don't like such a thing happening in the public in this country, which is okay. But then if you have a problem with these activities being shown to the youth of our nation in public view, then why would you share it on the internet? That doesn't quite add up. Good night, Love Can Make Me, and good night, Shiny Dogla. And I do enjoy that term, mind folks. Yes, Jojo Bear, I'm sure many other people would have seen similar acts in many other places in this island, because yes, some people in this island do seem to be too steamy for their own good, and such things do happen. But then when we move on from just it happening to someone recording it, and just the recording of it is kind of weird, like you're recording other people doing their private business. I think that's very likely a little kink you have to check into right there on its own, but okay, all right, maybe you say you have good reason for that. You recorded it, but then after you record it, you'd post it online. Like, that is always something I wonder about. And the other one I always wonder about, and this is something I think should be in a bill similar to this, where some people record dead bodies. Somebody recently died. This is a human being recently passing, and then somebody would record this with their backing vocals and throw it online for the world to see. I really don't like. I don't understand this compulsion with posting other people's private and intimate moments. I do not understand that. Like, I understand you see someone doing something where they shouldn't be doing it, and you're looking at it. Yes, Jeremy Francis, I know. Do you say this every night? and yes, okay, you point it out. You point it out. Look, you all are doing something horrible. Stop that. Hey, pull up your pants, boy. Hey, don't do that there, boy. Okay, fine. All right. Yes, all right. Okay, wow. But you're going to record this and then put it on the internet. And then sometimes when I see this and you see people doing this to really young people, sometimes children in their teen years, and someone is going to record something like this, throw it online and besmirch their name basically forever. This is something that very likely would never be able to be pulled down from online. But Hex Senpai with the tint advice, sir, are you sure that is a legal level of tint? And bear in mind, always remember this in Trinidad and Tobago, your vehicle is not your private property, at least not in that domain. If you are in there doing things you are supposed to do inside of your home, you can be charged. This is Trinidad and Tobago. Do not be mistaken. You will be charged. Behave yourself. Drink some water. Calm down. And now she herself, because she has recorded it, the woman who was recording it, her child is in the frame, may be found in breach of several parts of this law as proposed, even though it is in a public place, Richards pointed out. And personally, this is my personal view, personally, I kind of like that. I kind of like that. Responding to Richard's point, opposition Senator Jayanti Lakshmidial was of the view that if someone records a minor engaging in sexual activity in a house and they choose to take this evidence to the police, in her opinion, they are not committing an offense. If you decide to share via social media, and if you decide to share via WhatsApp or social media, two people having intercourse on the beach, then I think you will be captured by the intention to humiliate as opposed to having the intention of preventing a crime. And that I agree with. That's the point I have been making. That's the point I have been making. I don't understand that. If you're telling me that your purpose in this isn't some kind of thing to embarrass people, you're really trying to get things done, then you wouldn't share it on social media. If you were so disgusted by this act, this public act, this thing should never be seen in public in Trinidad and Tobago, then you're going to record it and post it on social media for more members of the Trinidad and Tobago public to see it. Nah, that does not make sense. J. Chris, you're saying that ain't making sense is your car? Well, okay, you could be of that view, but sir, they will arrest you. Well, not arrest you, very likely they may just embarrass you a bit. All right. Deputy Public Defender Raphael Morgan emphasized that unfortunately, such people can be penalized. While part of their intent may be altruistic in terms of shaming the police to doing something, part of it also encompasses embarrassing the alleged perpetrator and causing society to shun them. So, unfortunately, those acts can be caught up by this legislation, and it's a matter of how the prosecution wishes to proceed and whether they wish to charge and pursue the conviction against them. But the legislation is wide enough to capture those persons, and unfortunately, social justice warriors may be caught in the net. So, if you record people doing their private business and you feel so obligated that you must report it to the authorities, well, carry it to the police and explain to them what you were doing there, why you recorded this, how this whole thing played off, and you do that public service if you'd like. What you do not do is post it online and say, hey, look at these dirty, nasty people, and pretend like you're only posting it because you're so offended by it. And you're not posting it to get that little serotonin hit of the likes and the slight and the likes and the that little serotonin bump from the likes and the comments, from the little slight virality you might get from posting someone else's embarrassing moment. And that's the disgusting part to me. If we're being honest about this, most likely when someone posts this isn't about making Trinidad a more moral place. They're posting that because they want to get some more likes. And they know that if I post this specific thing, more people are going to respond to this. Richard Glubman asks, can it be considered private if done in public? Well, maybe it was done in public, maybe, but you recorded it and you posted it. So you would have been the one sharing their moment, whatever they were doing, and their nudity, and you would be the one sharing it out to further public viewing. So whether it was done in public or not, it's not your business to try and make it more public than it already was. But there is a unique case for this. There is a unique case for this where you could really ask some questions about this law. Positive radiation, I may not disagree with you, but you'd have to argue that point with the police. Shaming public authorities into action can prove illegal under Sexual Offences Act. This is an article from The Guardian recording during yesterday's meeting at the Special Select Committee. Opposition Senator Jayanti Lachmidial raised the issue of how the legislation interprets people's intention when recording and sharing content. So Lachmidial shared a past case in which a police officer was involved with a 14-year-old schoolgirl. She said the girl's parents reported it to the police station several times. But officers did nothing until a villager recorded a video and published it to shame the police. Yes, it embarrassed the child, it embarrassed the officer, but it actually got him charged. So it really does have a gray area that would depend on prosecutorial discretion. And yeah, that is a kind of gray area there. And when you're living in a country like Trinidad and Tobago, where some of these authorities, where if things were running as they should have been running, then if you go to the authorities, they would know what to do and they would deal with this thing as it should be dealt with. But if you're living in Trinidad and Tobago and you are aware that very often some of these things, when they are carried to the authorities, they don't go down the road that they should go down. Good night, King D Bunny. They don't go down the road they should be going down. Then it could lean to the idea where people may see that it would make more sense, they take these matters into their own hands. Yes, I know deaths that happened in public have been recorded. I know that. And by the way, counting what has happened in the past doesn't work for this specific law because this specific law is being debated right now. This is something I believe yet to be passed in the Senate here. So it is something that is to come. So what has happened in the past can't discount what this law would or wouldn't do. So yeah, what has happened in the past doesn't count for this. And an attorney, a public defender, raised another angle to this same point with this same bill, where you could have thank you, King the Bunny. Where you could have this mix-up happening, where some people trying to take the law into their own hands to some extent and trying to get things done more effectively in the eyes of the law. They're trying to take it to the public, and they could end up in trouble with this. And a public defender was raising another angle to this. Attorney on bill treat young sex offenders differently. Attorney Khadija Bedo says efforts should be made to ensure children under 18 who unknowingly committed an alleged sexual offense are not unjustly penalized and are able to learn from their mistakes. While the legislation provides for children who are victims of sexual offenses, Bedo said, we have not really addressed youth offenders at all. She added this was a concern when it came to publicly sharing images of a sexual nature without the consent of the people whose images are captured on film or video. Trinidad laws are useless because we lack in actual enforcement. I agree with that to a large extent. Woy, good night, Ria. This whole concept of the virtual sharing of images of this nature is very common among the teenage age group. Those are persons under 18. Bedo suggested that before charges are laid against alleged youth sex offenders, the Director of Public Prosecutions must give approval for those charges, and I understand that. And the point she's trying to make there is when this all happens, the entire thing, good night, Shai Panda, when the entire thing all happens under the age of 18. So the person who took the picture and the person who got the picture taken of them, both are under 18. Who they're sharing it to is under 18 also. And what would be done in that case? And the recommendation she gave was that the Director of Public Prosecution has a little leeway to decide what charges can be laid when the perpetrators are under 18 years old. Responding to questions from committee member Jayanti Lakshmi, Albedo said, in terms of the intervention of the DPP's office, we are suggesting sometimes with youth offenders, when you dig deeper into what transpired or the events that transpired, they do not always necessarily rise to the level of criminal conduct. She cited a case where a 13-year-old child takes an intimate image of another 13-year-old. As an example, should that really rise to the level of criminal conduct based on circumstances? So, what do you think in the live? What do you think in the live? But bear in mind, Richard Glubman, you said once done maliciously, charge them. But this law doesn't only mean if it was done maliciously. It's not only referring to maliciously. And even if it was done, yes, Ian Allen did get into some trouble with that, but it wasn't directly on that. But even if it was done maliciously, I think if it was someone under 18, again, this is something I pretty much agree with the lawyer here on, that people under 18, you must give some consideration. And bear in mind that when you have these young people growing up in they're growing up in a different environment, in a different world. The zeitgeist has changed. What they're growing up with is not, yes, Al-Rawi does have COVID. You know how many people say Al-Wari while his name is Al-Rawi? It's just always something I always like. I mean, it's spelled so often. It's Al-Rawi, but okay, cool. Yes, he does have COVID, along with one of the people in Dr. Rowley's entourage. I believe they also have it. But yes, I agree with this. You don't treat the people. You don't treat the people under 18 the same. And I agree with you, Richard Glubman. I do agree with you. The consideration as to whether it was done with malicious intent must be put in there. But as I was saying, even if it was done with malicious intent, I still think you treat it differently with people under 18. Because listen, if you allow 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds to be able to exercise all the malice they have in their head at any given moment. And these 14-year-olds could have some serious malice in their minds at some given moment. Some little thing could be the entire world crumbling around them. And here's the thing. This is the way I like to speak about this when especially older people are looking on at younger people and understanding how you think about this. At least this is how I try to think about this. Yes, to young people, it's their Whatever is the reason, someone of their random friends didn't like a post that they posted and they're ready to trip out and the whole world is crumbling and whatever. I know I myself may be trivializing whatever the issues may be here, but yes, understand the point I'm making. So even though to an adult, you're looking at young people's issues and you might be thinking how trivial that issue is with your adult perspective. But bear in mind, the person who is experiencing these issues do not have an adult perspective. The person and the people that experience these issues are children. They're young people who have children's perspectives. So that's why I think you must always have that leeway there for those in that age group. So you see someone tripping out over something very simple, you don't treat them like an adult tripping over something very simple. They're a child. So in the same terms, if you treat the reaction that even you're talking about with malicious intent there, even if they did something like this with malicious intent, I still think you treat it differently than you would if this was a full adult. A cocktail long time gave me adult perspective, J. Chris says. And here's the thing. Yes, I agree, Richard. Here's the thing. I think you're kind of correct. Not literally, but figuratively. That was kind of the idea of a cocktail, you know. So the cocktail is to let you know that there are painful consequences to this action you're doing here. That is the adult perspective. With the adult perspective, adults know or should know the better decisions to make based on the fact that wrong decisions, even mistaken decisions, oftentimes lead to painful ends and painful consequences. So with as you say, the cocktail jakers, that's literally it. You're actually correct. It was teaching you the adult perspective. Oh, when you don't listen to what the people in authority say and you go do what you want to do, yes, there are painful consequences to this. Learn about it now. Should that really rise to the level of criminal activity if it's just two 13-year-olds? Beto suggested the DPP, and she said you don't want two victims at the end of the day. And I agree. I agree with that. You do not want to make two victims where previously there may have been two lesser victims and now you're making two greater victims, because they may already be victims if they're engaging in such activities. Who knows? But you're not trying to exacerbate the situation. What's up, King JC? Early in this case may be relative. Good night, 868 Cokes. And I like when you all drop in late and mention that you are late. It reminds me to speak of the YouTube live and the YouTube channel. And if you ever miss pieces of this live and you'd like to catch it, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Nathan Springer, over on YouTube. Go over there, subscribe, and all of these lives are right there for your viewing pleasure. Well, all except, I believe, Mindful Live number 20, which had some audio problems, but we go on. All the rest are there. Go over there and you could listen. I believe there's there are more hours of me speaking than there are hours in the day right now. So if you really like to hear what I have to say, you can listen to it for quite a long time over on that YouTube channel. But if you miss anything, go over there. Nathan Springer over on YouTube. Nathan Springer over on YouTube, and subscribe. You wish my show had bacchanal? No, sir. I am not getting into that. Yes, interesting. You really need to. If you are not subscribed yet, I am offended. I hold that as a personal, I hold that offense personally. Go subscribe. Yes, and more likes equal more views. Make sure to hit that like button if you're over on YouTube. If you're over on TikTok or Instagram, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure the algorithm knows that you're paying attention, that, hey, this thing makes sense. I want to listen to what this guy is saying. And I think more people should too. And the algorithm would send it out there to more people. So hit that like button. And in the tone of these kind of offenses, I just found this a bit humorous. Belmont man jailed for exposing his buttocks to police. A 44-year-old Belmont man who exposed his buttocks to police was sentenced to 6 weeks in prison. Listen. Good night, SK Nate over on Instagram. Listen, I find 6 weeks is a bit much. Now, I understand the man was rude, he was lewd, he was disrespectful and all of that. I understand. But 6 weeks is a bit much. 6 weeks is a month and a half. Police reported that at about 12:45 p.m. on February 19th, so in the broiling hot sun in the middle of the day, PCs Baldwin and Dowridge were on mobile patrol along George Street when they saw a man and a woman arguing. Police said when they stopped the man, I'm not calling his name, of Upper Belmont Valley Road, Belmont looked in their direction, pulled down his pants and underwear, and exposed his buttocks to them. The officers arrested and charged him for indecent exposure. He will serve his time with hard labor as directed by the magistrate after pleading guilty. A month and a half. You want to play disrespectful and expose buttocks? Well, a month and a half it is. And the exposure of the understanding how he got into prison and understanding the rumors and reputation of prison. I hope those 6 weeks pass quickly for this man. I hope he comes out safe and unharmed. But sir, I mean, how are you going to be exposing yourself to the police? But here's an interesting thing with that, right? Exposing buttocks in Trinidad and Tobago, according to our police, according to our police plus our judicial system, is deserving of 6 weeks in jail. Is a thong, I'm being graphic in my explanation, is a thong on Carnival an exposed buttock? Can you tell me that? Honestly, is a thong at Carnival an exposed buttock? Because I think it is. I think that could be about the same thing. I mean, you could debate whether people want to see and what people want to see and what people don't want to see. And okay, that's your debate. But is it not the same thing? King JC says that is a stretch. How is that a stretch? How is that a stretch? No, they didn't say in this way they charged the man. They didn't, listen, someone in the chat specified that it has to do with the orifice in specific, you know, the orifice in particular, that is the particularly rude part. And if someone is wearing that one string in Carnival, that one part is blocked. I think whether the man spread himself asunder and showed the police, you know, everything or not, the charge would have remained the same. The police said they were showed his buttock. The buttock refers to that fleshy bit you see. And I think that many of the Carnival attire would be equal to just about the same in terms of exposure. And I find that if you try to make it into specifics of whether you saw this little bit of sphincter muscle or not, it gets into a really technical part of the law. And Ria asked, doesn't time and place play a major role or a major factor? I don't think in our law books there was that major factor. So here's the thing. If you want time and place to play a major factor, then you have to put that into the law books. As it stands, what that actually ends up being is the police are the law. So the police could decide, if I see you and I want to arrest you for indecent exposure, I can. Or if I see you and I don't want to arrest you for indecent exposure, I don't have to. And I hate with a passion those subjective laws that give all the authority of making the law and of enforcing the law and of if and when and how and who puts it all on Richard Glubman. Puts it all on the police officers. I do not like that. I do not like that. So you have to make the law clear. Is showing the human body in Trinidad and Tobago, is showing my naked human body illegal? If showing it is illegal, then we have to look at what is going on in Carnival. Or then don't make it illegal and don't try and get into this hypocritical argument and try and talk about this thing in this way. King JC said it's not what you do, is how you do it. His indecent exposure was used as a disrespect. But here's the thing, King JC. Again, as Richard Glubman says, it is illegal at carnival time as well. And I know that. I know that it is. It's just not enforced. And the charge, King JC, the legal charge is not disrespectful exposure. The charge is indecent exposure, which refers to your nakedness in and of itself. That has nothing to do with who you showed it to and the manner you showed it in and whether you jiggle it or whatever. No, it's exposing it. The exposure by itself is considered indecent. All right, that was just a point that I found interesting. I found that point interesting, and that to me tells the tale, as I regularly speak about about cultural enforcement. And the fact is, most laws are more culturally enforced than anything else. The real enforcement for things in society is cultural enforcement. So if you really want to change things, you don't change the laws, you change the culture. Because if the culture deems something appropriate, then the laws could say what it wants, people would not enforce it. While if the culture deems something inappropriate, then the laws could say whatever they want, people generally would shun it. It is about the culture, not the law. This is just proof of that. All right. Now, let's move on to some state business, the business of these state enterprises. I feel kind of like a broken record sometimes when I speak about these state enterprises. It seems proven over and 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 one more over that the state, the government, politicians are not good at running enterprises, are not good at running businesses by and large. That seems pretty obvious by now. Now, there's some bacchanal at Tech. Yeah, there's some bacchanal brewing at Tech. Now, I found the timing of this article, the timing of this news to be interesting, especially noting what we all knew happened last week, Wednesday, and knowing some of the allegations that spun around during and after that time. The court says, no salary increase for Tech workers for 2015 to 2017. No, this bacchanal is not linked to the blackout, as far as I know. Workers at the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission will not get a salary increase for the period 2015 to 2017 after the Industrial Court ruled that it would be too expensive for Tech to pay at this time. Now, starting right off at the jump there, I find it insane. I will say it again, and I will try to say it nearly every time I have the opportunity to say such a thing. I find it insane the way Trinidad works out wages years after they're gone. I find that to be an insane practice. How are you working out how much you're going to pay me in 2015 to 2017, in 2022? Come on. What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? What is the purpose of this? How does that make sense? But it's just what we do apparently in Trinidad. Everyone in Trinidad does this. It's how Trinidad functions. I guess, you know what? I take that back. That might be the way Trinidad inadvertently helps people save. They help the working class save up to, buy those larger investments by giving them all their pay increases as lump sums in back pay. So we help you save. That's what Trinidad does with that backward negotiating. The judgment was delivered on February 18th by a three-member team. The workers were represented by the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, which requested 12% wage increase along with a cost of living allowance increase of 4 cents. I all for people getting raised. Listen, OWTU, no offense, man. I like people getting more money. 12% is a lot, though. 12% is kind of steep. 12% is kind of steep. In delivering its decision, the panel said, while we are convinced that the union is deserving of an increase in salary under normal circumstances, we are equally convinced that the commission is not in a position to pay anything at this point in time. Should the court make an award in favor of the union and the commission is forced to pay, the logical result will be retrenchment. The 50-page judgment said TNTech is currently owed $1.38 billion, of which $964 million is for arrears by various ministries and state agencies. So, here it is. The TNTech cannot pay their workers a wage increase because they are owed money. They are owed money by the government. So the government that owns TNTech, owes TNTech money. So the government that owns TNTech cannot pay their government workers who they employ any more money because the government owes this company that the government owns money. And if they do not pay them that money, they cannot pay their workers the money. It is insane. It's just a money spinning scheme to kind of hide the money and get us all dizzy. That's what that is. That doesn't really add up. In its own submission, the union suggested that TNTech raise its rates in order to earn more so that the company can pay workers an increased rate. So OWTU, where was I? Argued that the last increase in electricity rates was in 2005. So if you're paying more in your electricity rates and you're vexed with someone, you're upset with someone, look for your resident OWTU member and point your finger at him, because OWTU is one of those recommending that they raise the rates in Trinidad. Now, as I say that, you don't have to tell me. I am aware that Trinidad has some of the lowest rates in the world, and I believe for sure the lowest rates in the Caribbean. So I understand that. I'm just pointing that out. That the union is one of those asking for the rates to increase. Yes, our rates are low, and personally, I think probably they should increase. You know. Let's get more realistic here, because what ends up happening is the cost to produce electricity anywhere in the world is, except for the fuel, bringing in the fuel, but in terms of the process itself is about the same. But if you have the government paying to keep the rates low, then the government would be owing TNTech more money. It's already established the government isn't paying them more money. So we don't want the government to owe them any more money. Probably we should get that money from the customers. It is the view of the union that the big ticket items that are required to turn the commission around. This is what the union says. The union is giving advice on how to turn TNTech around. If you really want TNTech to be profitable, this is the advice given by the unions. 1. Charging economic rates for light and power. 2. Fixing the onerous power purchase agreements between the commission and its bulk suppliers. 3. Negotiations for a more reasonable gas price from the National Gas Company. Now, that more reasonable gas price business is more of the same, because NGC, again, owned by the government. So, yeah, more of the same, playing around with that money. TNTech submitted that as a state body, it could only act on the direction of the government, and the government didn't give them permission to give that 12% increase. The judgment panel said the union, while arguing that the increased wages would cost TNTech $51 million a year going forward, it failed to take into consideration the back pay that would be due not only on the salaries but on COLA and other allowances. The panel also agreed that with a yearly expense of $4.2 billion and an annual income of $3.2 billion, Tiantec was operating at a loss and could not afford any increases at this time. What do you want from that? What do you want from that? I'm sorry for the Tiantec workers. I'm sorry, Tiantec workers. This is how most companies work. This is how most companies work. Why don't we just stop using electricity, King JC says, and use another better force of energy like solar, hydroelectricity, or windmills? First off, Mr. King JC, solar or hydro or windmills all produce electricity. So we won't stop using electricity. You mean we would produce the electricity from another source. And then the problem with that is if Trinidadians are already accustomed to the cheapest pricing in electricity across the entirety of the Caribbean, what do you expect when you attempt to give them the price for these renewable sources of energy? I would urge you, go find an unsubsidized pricing for the cost of renewable energy and compare it to the cost of the energy we currently produce and see if you'd be willing to pay that percentage more. Ria says, honestly, if I was Tiantec, I shut off the electricity in the relevant buildings and make them pay reconnection fee too. The problem is when it's government buildings and the government is also your boss. So are you going to shut off the electricity from your boss's building? So how is that going to work? It's government buildings that owe it. And on top of that, I believe MTS spoke about that previously. There are laws that prohibit them from taking legal action against the government. So the government can owe them how much ever they want to owe them, and there's not a thing anyone can do about that. The union, though, said that they recognize the political intent behind establishing the industrial court. Listen to this. OWTU in a media release said they recognize the political intent behind establishing the industrial court, i.e., removing workers' rights to take direct action in their own interest and placing that power within the state. When the state sides with employers and is itself an employer, where can workers receive justice? Only in the streets. Only in the streets. So OWTU here is throwing stones at the industrial court itself. And I understand their point to some extent. What they're throwing at the industrial court is that they're saying the government did a kind of smart trick with the industrial court. What unions generally did was they would use their direct action, the power in numbers. They would personally go out there, tell the workers down tools, and we're going to get this done. Now, for example, if we were to use that example in the case of Tiantec, what a union would generally do is if they have all the Tiantec workers unionized, they decide that, you know what, all of our workers are not going to work today, and then that would force Tiantec to basically have to agree to whatever the workers say. Now, the industrial court prohibits that kind of action, pulling it into a more civilized area where the court gets to speak about this and a judgment, except when they win Kwesi. Correct. And a judgment is put out there. You know, the court gets to do this. And what the union is saying is that by doing this, the state has tricked them. So they have lost their groundswell power. They no longer have that street power where they could go out there in the street, but the state has now taken that power and put it inside of the industrial court where the state now has control. Now, I don't really agree with that because I believe somewhere I was reading this, I can't remember exactly the number, but I believe our industrial court, along with most industrial courts, I believe, generally rule more in favor of the unions. I've heard it said regularly, many companies, many businesses don't really want to go to the industrial court because very likely the industrial court sides with the union. So what the unions are saying there is incorrect even in looking at the facts of the matter. If the industrial court sides with the employees more, then what you're saying there doesn't really balance out. And to be saying that at the industrial court, when the president of the industrial court was probably the first legal mind in this country to come out very early in this pandemic and speak about mandatory vaccinations and speak about the job policy as far as it goes with that. That was the industrial court president. And then to make it seem now that the industrial court is all beholden to the state, I disagree. I disagree. OWT said the financial struggles of Tiantec were not the fault of the workers, yet they were being made to bear the burden. And they may be right. Let me just say he is right. They may be right, but even if you are right, that's kind of how it always goes. If I have a company, this is what I don't understand about the union sometimes. If I have a company, let's think about this like a real business. I am sure, and this is why I think sometimes it's a bit dishonest on the union leaders' part, because I'm sure almost all of these union bosses have private companies and private businesses. They know how businesses run, yet they pretend like they don't. If you have a private company, and your private company is making $1,000, but your expenses is $1,500, and you have a worker, you're pulling money from other sources to, scrape up and pay this worker $200 a day. $200 a day. They're scraping up to, pay that worker that. All right. Okay. And then the worker comes and demands a raise. How is that going to happen? Those things don't happen in regular companies. If the company is making less money than it is spending, they cannot then choose to spend more money and pay you more. That just doesn't add up. And okay, you might say that it isn't the fault of the worker, as OWTU says here. They're saying it's not the OWTU, it's not the fault of the Tiantec workers, which may be true, but that doesn't change the reality. If the company isn't making enough money, they cannot pay you more. That's just reality. The workers of Tiantec cannot afford to be the PNM's scapegoat for mismanagement by the senior managers, the board, and the government. All right. Speaking of mismanagement, speaking of government and state mismanagement, let's go into some further issues and see, and not only mismanagement, this same problem with the state owing the state money, where himself owes himself and cannot pay himself because himself owes himself too much money. Such a strange thing. More money woes for EFCL as court orders pay $17 million to Emil Elias NHIC. Already saddled with a mounting debt burden, the Education Facilities Company Limited has had $17 million added to its balance sheet as owing to a local contractor. On Monday, Justice Frank C. Prasad signed off on an order compelling EFCL to pay NH International $14 million and change plus interest of $3.8 million as outstanding payment for work done on Parvati Girls Hindu College in 2013. Bear in mind, this contract didn't finish. The contractor began work and the interim payments were made until May 2018 when the parties agreed to terminate the contract. And upon termination of that contract, the NH International has been trying over and over. The article goes through several different ways. There are several numbers to read where they asked for this, they requested that, they brought them up here, they brought them there, they brought them there, and even after all of this, EFCL failed to pay. The lawsuit said NHIC confirmed the figure, but in breach of the termination agreement, EFCL has failed to pay. It said in August of 2021, NHIC wrote to EFCL demanding payment, and on 2 occasions, the special purpose company asked for an extension. I find this personally embarrassing. This is a state company. This state company is representative of our nation. This company is owned by Trinidad and Tobago, basically. The owner of this EFCL is Trinidad and Tobago. And Trinidad and Tobago, unlike the Lannisters, cannot pay our debts, apparently. So Trinidad and Tobago, we have companies running us around. Pay we money now, boy. Hey, give me my money now, boy. Please pay with my money now, boy. Like, this is the state. This is the state. And it's sounding like a small contractor begging some homeowner that had some bad dealing at the end of their building arrangement and begging him to pay him the rest of money that they're owed. And to be fair, this isn't the only time I've heard about this. Now, the thing with this is you cannot just point the finger at one government, at the current government in power. That's just not how it works. Because, for example, this contract started, I know, I'm getting to that interesting. This contract started in 2013. And listen, as someone in the construction field, the government contracts have become notorious for something, especially back in that 2010 to 2015 little window there. The government contracts became very notorious for something. They would pay you way more than market value. You would make a lot of money, more than you would make in the private sector by and large. But you're going to wait quite a while. And if you are not big enough, there are small contractors that are still waiting for payment from that 2010 to 2015 window. It's obvious if NH International here still cannot get money from that window. You could imagine if you are a small contractor in that window, there are still small contractors waiting for money. And here's the wicked thing with that. For some of you who may not be aware, if a small contractor is owed like that, the money for that project is already out of his pocket because the employees that are hired in construction are daily paid or weekly paid. They don't, the mason, the laborer, the carpenter, all the skilled workers, they don't want to hear at the end of the week or at the end of the fortnight, they don't want to hear that, well, Rowley, them ain't run the check yet, they don't care. They need their money in cash right at that point in time. They have some bills to go pay. And you as the contractor have to find that money while the government still owes you. For example, this is a prime example right here. The government still owes them. And this, in case you didn't notice, is the Education Facilities Company Limited. Linked to the same Ministry of Education that we know currently owes something like 300 million to MTS. The lawsuit said NHIC confirmed the figure, but I passed that point. In November 2021, Newsday was told the company's future, that is EFCL, was being carefully considered, given the challenges it has been facing to pay its debts to contractors and to pay staff salaries. At the time, Newsday was told one option was possibly settling all outstanding debts, after which the company would be wound up. The EFCL was established as a special purpose state enterprise on March 11th, 2005 under the Patrick Manning administration. Its functions involved repairing and maintaining early childhood education centers and primary and secondary schools. At a news conference, this was said, the PNM has said it before, that the current situation with the EFCL was something that they inherited. It was a situation they inherited because when they came into office in September 2015, they inherited a situation where a large number of contractors were not paid and a large number of schools were left unfinished. This is what compounded the situation. We are trying our best to ensure that our contractors are paid and we meet our commitments. In May 2019, the government said it had to settle nearly $2 billion in debt, legal costs, and claims by contractors against the EFCL. Responding to a question in the Senate on behalf of Education Minister Dr. Nyan Gadsby-Dolly, leader of government business Clarence Rambarat said the EFCL is managing a massive debt burden. All right, this is the problem area right here. The situation was brought on by an overly ambitious and unsustainable school construction program embarked in the years 2010 to 2015, with several large contracts awarded in the last 2 years of the former administration's tenure. And I could tell you, with personal knowledge, that is true. And that created so many problems. So many problems that created. They went out and threw contracts out there like rain. Contracts rained. In that 2014-2015 period, those 2 years, contracts rained in Trinidad and Tobago. But getting the contract isn't getting the money. And the contract could be boasted that we are building this and we are building that and we are building this and we are building that, but nobody got any money yet, and none of the projects have finished, but the boast could have been made. Politics for you. Rambarat said the Education Ministry took practical steps to ensure the continuance of its programs for reconstructing and repairing the school's infrastructure. Here's what the Education Ministry did. Listen, all of you who have been following Mindful Live for the last couple weeks, listen to this. Here is what the Education Ministry did to ensure the continuance of programs for reconstructing and repairing the school's infrastructure by transferring the agency for essential project management services from the EFCL to, hear this, to the National Maintenance Training and Security Company Limited. Does anyone know what the National Maintenance Training and Security Company Limited is? Does anyone know? Yes, that is MTS. So, what this man is saying here is that EFCL owes so much in debt that they couldn't handle a certain section of the Education Ministry's repairs and reconstructing. So, you know what? EFCL owes so much money. You know what we would do? We would put that over on MTS. And here's the thing. MTS, as we read before, works like a private contractor. MTS functions like a private contract. So MTS is going to be getting a contract to go and do this bit of refurbishment, this bit of reconstructing and repair, and they aren't going to get that money, but it isn't going to raise on the EFCL debt sheet. It's just moving money around. It's just moving money around, and I find it ridiculous. Personally, I find it ridiculous. And the thing is, this EFCL company, if you read, it was started by former Prime Minister Manning, and this EFCL company is one of these same companies that the PSA head, I don't know how many of you were in that live when we spoke about that, where the PSA head had some criticisms for Dr. Rowley. Dr. Rowley, when opening a hatchery center somewhere in Central, when opening that, he spoke about getting the permanent secretaries out of the private sector, privatizing certain parts of the public sector to get that lethargy out of there, to get it moving faster, to get it moving more efficient. And Trinidadians would agree with that, because we know the public service isn't the most efficient area in our country. But the Public Service Association head, the union head, came out to say that these plans have failed before. He was saying that when the government removes these companies, removes these responsibilities out from the main section of the public service and put them into these specialized companies where they can hire people out of the private sector, it doesn't improve the service. And I think EFCL is a case in point of that. That kind of proves the PSA's argument right there, because this was removed. EFCL, I suppose, all that EFCL does would have at one point in time been under the Ministry of Education. And the Ministry of Education, would just have to do all of it. But no, we wanted to get the repairs in schools done more efficiently. So we take that group, that amount of responsibility, and we put that in a company, a specialized company, where we hire a board. to run this company, and this board of professionals would really know how to run this company, and they would do this thing good and efficiently, and they would save us money, and we would say that $4 billion in debt later. PSA rejects Revenue Authority model. PSA rejects Revenue Authority model. Now, this is linked. This is actually linked to the same thing we're speaking about here. Because, a little background, the Revenue Authority aims to join Customs and Excise and the Inland Revenue Division. And what they would do is they would also have a board. This board would be appointed basically by the government, because the majority person in Parliament appoints the board. The majority person in Parliament appoints the board. The board would be appointed by the government, and they would run this thing. So basically, the Revenue Authority, to some extent, is kind of the same thing. You're moving these responsibilities out from under the public service, out from under the Public Service Commission in and of itself, and putting it under a more board-controlled entity, an entity where you could bring in some private workers to, really get this thing efficient. Last, Public Service Association President Leroy Baptiste is rejecting the move by Finance Minister Colm Imbert to appoint a board of the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority come March. The TTRA will eventually replace the Board of Inland Revenue and the Customs and Excise Division. However, speaking to the Express yesterday, PSA President Leroy Baptiste expressed grave concerns with the TTRA model, as it can be seen as dismantling the public service. Places like the Regional Health Authority, Water and Sewerage Authority moved to this TTRA model, and it has not worked. It has not benefited the public servants. The one thing the government succeeded in doing is having the politicians more involved in these authorities and picking the leadership to run the organizations. I understand this point. He's saying there's a deliberate move on the part of this administration to sideline and marginalize the trade unions as a stakeholder in this country, and also trample on the workers' rights. I understand the first point he's making there, where if this was done before, and we've seen these authorities created before, we've seen what happens with these authorities when we have governments appointing the boards of these authorities. We've seen how it goes. What reason do we have to believe that this would be any better? What reason do we have to believe that? And this, I think, is even a more peculiar thing to be under the specific authority of politicians, because this has to do with taxes. When it comes to people's money, things get serious. A UNC senator spoke about this some time ago. This was back in 2021, Tuesday the 14th of September. UNC Senator Finance Minister will control Revenue Authority Board. Opposition Senator Jayanti Lachmidial has accused Minister of Finance Colm Imbert of undermining the independence of the proposed TTRA board by having oversight of the appointees. She was speaking during the Senate debate there. Lachmidial accused the government of proposing a structure in which a politically appointed board of management could control the hiring of staff. In referencing Clause 16, she said, this would decimate an entire portion of our public service and usurp the fairness and equality of the Service Commission, thereby removing the layer of protection between politicians and taxpayers. The men and women appointed to positions established under the civil service regulations are being effectively removed from positions where they are shielded from political pressure and the treacherous intentions which we know politicians can possess. This bill will no longer allow our civil servants to carry out the important function of collecting revenue on behalf of the state in a manner that is free and fair, and free from fear of political interference, Lachmidial said. Now, there are some counters to this argument. part of what they're seeing is that the entire thing isn't under the control of the government. They would be appointing the board, but I believe there would be a separate part of the Revenue Authority that would be controlled by someone who is actually appointed by the commission, by the Service Commission. But what they are saying nonetheless is if the government appoints the board and the board has some power over the authority as a whole, the government would have a lot of power over the revenue collecting authority in Trinidad and Tobago. And do we really want political, specific, partisan political interference in collecting money in Trinidad and Tobago? And before I go, there was another point in that I would like to draw too. It wasn't just about collecting money. When you look at this simple little bill with a mere 42 clauses, it looks so benign and non-threatening, but it impacts upon a host of other laws, including the Proceeds of Crime Act, the Financial Intelligence Unit, where this Director General will now be the lead who will receive intelligence reports and has the power to investigate it or not. So, this person would have a lot of very sensitive information in their reach, in their sphere. And if you have politicians controlling civil sensitive information, that is usually a recipe for disaster. Those things don't regularly turn out just the way you expect it to. All right. That's all I have for now for you folks over on Instagram and on YouTube. Thank you for joining the Mindful Live. Do tune in again tomorrow at 9:30 for the next Mindful Live. Until then, I will see you. Don't worry though, if you are interested in listening a little more and joining into the conversation. The conversations usually go really well. The Mindful After Chat usually goes really well. If you're interested, I'll be on TikTok for a little while longer. Do tune in there if you are interested in that. If not, I will see you